Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 St. Jude DFS Tactics show. Before we get started, there has been one late withdrawal. That is Hideki Matsuyama. He has withdrawn due to a neck injury. I saw that today. So the last that I know, there are 120 players in the field this week. I saw Hideki's withdrawal around 4 p.m. or so, and I haven't really checked since then. Getting prepped for the show, doing my own lineups and such. So if you are watching in chat, let me know, let the community know if there are other withdrawals so we can adjust on the fly. But we are here for all of your lineup questions. Who are you wanting to pivot to? Who are you wanting to build your lineups around? All of that good stuff. So let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there. It's going to make you a much better DFS player as well as a much smarter gambler. Go check them out. It's well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media: Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Twitch, all of it. This is where I place my betting cards, especially on Twitter and Instagram. Well, Twitter mainly, the betting cards. So I'll put that out later this evening after the show. Normally I will have some research out as well. Did not do any of that this week, and if you're wondering why, go back to the Data Dive show and I explain why. But that's where I normally post some research throughout the week. And then Twitch, I am live every day, either looking at golf statistics or updating spreadsheets, looking forward to the next week, or maybe even just hanging out and playing a couple games or whatever. So if you are on Twitch, give me a follow there and come hang out every once in a while, as I am live every day. And then finally, we are live now. Chat's open. Again, do you want to build some lineups around any particular players? How do you feel about the live decision, the 3 players that the judge ruled that are not able to play: Taylor Gooch, Hudson Swafford, and Matt Jones? It's going to be an exciting start to the FedEx Cup playoffs. So let's figure out our tactics and strategies for the 2022 St. Jude. And we normally start with the mixed condition model that I make for the week on Wednesdays. However, we're going to start here with Wind Finder, and I'm going to tell you now that there is no wind factored into my mixed condition model. I checked this as late as essentially early this morning, about 1 or 2 Wednesday morning, and there was not a lot of wind. It's actually picked up during the day, so this was about where it was the majority of the time, and it stayed there consistently for both days. You can see there's a little bit of wind projected to pick up in the afternoon tomorrow, and it's going to be, I don't want to say windy, but you could get, in terms of moderate, it might be moderate. I don't remember the exact miles per hour number that it needs to be classified as moderate in Fantasy National. But what I'm saying is there's more wind than I was seeing even early this morning. With this, I'm going to have to give a slight, and I mean the slightest of slight edges, to Thursday AM, Friday PM, only because it's supposed to be so calm in the morning and then pick up throughout the afternoon, whereas Friday looks pretty consistent in the 10 mile an hour sustained, anywhere from 13 to 15 mile an hour gusts. So again, am I putting a whole lot of weight into this? No, not really. If anything, I might have a slight lean on a Thursday AM, Friday PM, and even then, I'm not even going to try to force a full AM PM split. If I'm really torn between 2 players, this might be a tiebreaker, but I figured I'd show it to you. I do see a little bit of an AM PM split, but nothing that forces a lot of consideration. So with that, let's now move to the mixed condition model that I made for this week. And it is a very concentrated one, which is to be expected with the lack of data or lack of consistent data here at TPC Southwind. we either have the course data, but it's not a full field, or we have the St. Jude full field, but not the course. So pretty concentrated, especially around the metrics that we really hammered Monday night. So first off, I will admit this is probably a bit too much. Honestly, you probably should put 20% in strokes gained par 4, and right off the bat, this is one of the metrics or reasons that I would lose this week, is that I have too much emphasis in the par 4s. Having said that, the 3 years that the FedEx or WGC St. Jude was here at TPC Southwind, every single player in the top 20 was positive in strokes gained par 4. So again, I just put a whole lot of emphasis into it. I couldn't really narrow down which of the 3 ranges were most important between 354, 400, 450, or 455. They all seemed fairly important, kind of fluctuated from year to year. If there was a range, I think it's the 400 to 450, but because I'm so non-committal to that range, I just put a whole bunch in par 4s total. So if I would have broken out a range, say the 400 to 450, I might have put 15 to 20% in there and 5% in the specific length. But because I think all 3 ranges are going to be important, I just put a quarter of my mixed condition model is in par 4s. And then we move to strokes gained approach. When I mentioned Monday, when we have a new course, and that's how I basically treated this. This course has never seen a full field. I essentially treat it as a new course. And at a new course with no stats, I prefer strokes gained approach. So I have 15% here. I have 15% in good drives gained, and towards the very end of that page in Fantasy National, I added the difficult to hit filter, and I really liked that moving forward. These fairways are generally have rated as average, but if you looked at the course breakdown, in fact, let me bring that up for you just very quickly. In the course breakdown, we see the driving accuracy is much lower here, and the green regulation percentage is much lower here. So if fairways are a premium, if greens are a premium, that leads to good drives gained. I added the fairways difficult to hit. I just felt like these fairways will be difficult for most players, especially the course doesn't demand layups. The distance is actually further here. So players who are able to hit fairways while still gaining distance get a big advantage here at TPC Southwind. So 15% in good drives gained when fairways are difficult to hit. 15% in par 3s. We talked about the par 5s being very mitigated in importance here. Yes, the 2 easiest holes at TPC Southwind are the par 5s. The one on the back plays to a half a shot under par. The one on the front plays to a quarter of a shot under par. But after that, again, only being 2 par 5s, after that, the course gets pretty darn difficult. So I just didn't feel like there was a lot to be put into the par 5s. So that's a second parameter or statistic, if you will, that I will lose to. The first one being if I have too much in par 4s. The second being if par 5s end up being important, I have 0% in there. If they end up being important, that's going to cause my data model to be off. So those are the 2 factors built into the model that I will lose to, and then I'll go into the specific players later. But 15% in par 3s. If there was a range, it was 175 to 200. But again, like the par 4s, I didn't feel comfortable separating them out. And with the par 3s, the 4s, and the 5s, essentially all the same in terms of importance as you move from top 10s to top 5s. I felt like par threes were going to be very important, and we just discussed how important I think the par fours are going to be. So I got quite a bit in the par threes. I put 10% in opportunities gained, and I didn't add any filters. I thought about numerous different things, and I couldn't force myself to commit to one. And that's a lot of something you're going to hear tonight. I was honestly, I was just a lot of non-committal metrics that I have with no data. It's not that we don't have any data. It is a mixed bag of data, and that makes me even less comfortable than no data. At least no data, I can try to walk my way through a course. But with mixed data, it gets, as a statistician, I don't like it. But anyway, so I couldn't commit to a filter, so I just kept it at pure opportunities gained. And then I have 5% in each putting on Bermuda, birdies gained, procs, and then the specific procs that I do feel like that will be more important than the others. So let's first start with the putting. And every year at TBC Southwind, it has been fast Bermuda. But we talked about Monday, there are just not enough rounds to justify using fast Bermuda. And I am always an advocate of keeping timelines similar as opposed to rounds similar. So 5% on Bermuda, and that dates back to the beginning of the calendar year. So you have the Honda, which is lightning, Arnold Palmer, which is lightning. You got the Valero, which is average. So you got all of the speeds in here. More than likely they'll be fast this week, but there's just not enough rounds. 5% in Bermuda putting, 5% in birdies gained. We spent a lot of time Monday talking about opportunities and birdies. 5% of total procs. This is a bit of a not a hedge, but a thing that I'm focusing on that I don't know if a lot of others are going to. It just feels like total procs is going to be pretty important, especially with the green so small. And then as I looked into the data yesterday, there was a pretty low outlier, a pretty significant low outlier in this range. And then when you removed that, it became pretty important. So I put 5% in total and an extra 5% here. So there's a look at the data model that I have built for this week. And before we reveal the rankings, I decided to go last 24. We talked about this on Sunday evening in the initial research. These guys have qualified for the FedEx Cup. They've been playing on the PGA Tour. You don't have any of the newer players or the sponsors exemptions or anything like that. So they've got enough rounds lately. So honestly, this last 24 is basically the last 3 months. 36, I only use Strokes Gained Approach 36 because I want to see it as a longer term statistic. It's my favored. It's my preferred. And then the two specific the two specific filters go back to 1-1. So the last 36 fairways difficulty, I believe there was 30 as the top. Could have easily went 24, but I went and wanted to make sure I grabbed every round that I could since there weren't a ton. And then Bermuda, there was plenty. There were plenty of rounds in Bermuda, so I left it at 36. With that, let's go ahead and reveal the rankings. Again, just specifically from a numbers standpoint, not counting form, I guess part of it would be form, but not counting prior course success, anything like that, just purely by the numbers. My top 10 are Tony Finau, Xander, Joo Hyung Kim, Sung Jae, Will Zalatoris, Scotty Scheffler, Brendan Steele, Davis Riley, Rory, and JT Poston. Brendan Steele might be a surprise to some, especially at this price. You can see the metrics that we are putting a whole lot of emphasis in, he is very good at. He is getting raised in that regard. I don't know if he's 7th, but I would not sleep on Brendan Steele. So I am comfortable with him at least being high in my rankings. Davis Riley has been in great form. Again, you see the price. He's been in great form. So like that. Burns, hey, shot. How you doing? You think, honestly, that's not a bad way of thinking. I'm actually pretty high on Sam Burns, even though he's 21st in my rankings. I'm pretty high on Sam Burns, so I like where you're thinking. But the one surprise, I guess I shouldn't say surprise, the one overreaction that this data model is having is from Joo-Hyun Kim. Not to say that he doesn't deserve to be considered or even highly rated, but he has so few rounds. With his win last week, he is getting vaulted up the rankings board. I mean, look here, he gained 12.5 last week on the greens. That's contributing to all of his Bermuda putting. Is he a good putter? Probably. But he's not 12.5. I'm sorry. He's just not 12.5. So, in a lot of these rounds, we don't get measured because the Open, proprietary, U.S. Open, proprietary, and then the Scottish, we get the data except for the umbrella stats, I'll call them. So, I'm not saying to be cautious on Joo-Hyun Kim, but understand why he is where he is in this data model. He's got so few rounds, any data input will be drastically affecting him as opposed to the others. Hey Jude, I get the reference. Very good. Not my kind of music, but there you go, P. How you doing? Good to see you. Thanks for jumping in chat. Just went through my top 10. So, again, Brendan Steele might be a shock at 7th. Don't be. He's getting a little bit bumped because of our heavy percentage in these three, and he's very good in those three. Davis Riley's fine. He's been in great form. I don't think Joo-Hyun Kim's third for the reasons I was mentioning. He is any round or any tournament is going to drastically affect him because he does not have quite that many rounds. Anyway, so there's a look at my top 10. Let's go through the price board. We have, let me bring up the projected ownerships per Fantasy National. So, there's that, and then I need chat back up. Sorry, I've got so many things in the backgrounds and stuffs and things and all the stuffs and things that I need to. I really would like to have an easier way of organizing all this. Long-winded way of me bitching, basically. There you go. All right. So with this, we have 7 players in the 10Ks. Rory, Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Cam Smith, Patrick Cantlay, Justin Thomas, and Jon Rahm. In here, you've got one big pivot, and it's a pivot, even in a 10K. But you have looks like your second most projected owned player and your fourth. So your second most projected owned player and the one that is the most chalky in the 10Ks, probably no surprise, it's Rory. It's just been playing great. Now the Bermuda putting can be a little bad, I guess. It can be bad. But I mean, look here. I mean, number 2 in par 4s, number 4 in irons, gives himself a bunch of opportunities. Everyone knows when Rory starts rolling it, he can get going quickly. Number 1 in birdies, number 4 in procs, and the total procs is fine. Yeah, Rory is your number 2 most projected owned player in the entire field, number 1 in the 10Ks. You've got Justin Thomas is the number 4 projected owned player in the field and second in the 10Ks at 15.7. Okay. My data model's a little lower on him. We haven't seen him in a little while other than the Open. Par 4 is fine. Now his irons have been lackluster in the last 36 rounds, at least by Justin Thomas's standards. They're still great. But, you start putting yourself into these prime fields where, you've got, it's almost like a WGC field where you have the best players in the world. When you lose 4.8, and it's the only tournament he's lost lately, I mean, forever, basically, but it's going to affect it. So he misses the cut at the Genesis. Wasn't great, I'm sure. The Open, he made the cut, to a clunker finish. Probably wasn't the best. He was in fine form in May and early June. I like Justin Thomas. You know he was going to be. You had to have known he was going to be chalky. Justin Thomas is fine. I don't love it. I don't hate it. Just kind of middling on it. So elsewhere here in the 10K, Scotty Scheffler's right at 15%. Xander's at 13.5%. So this is where you start getting into some of your potential leverage in the area. Xander is, I mentioned Xander, sorry, he's at 13.7. So Cantley, 12.2% projected owned. By no means a pivot, by no means a unique chosen player. There's quite a bit to like here. I mean, the par 4s he plays extremely well. He's top 10 in par 3 performance and opportunities, birdies. The proximity could be an issue, but man, seeing Patrick Cantley at 12.2, I kind of like that, to be honest with you. Then there's Jon Rahm, who is the lowest rated in the 10Ks for me. He's getting hurt by the fact that he is not giving himself a lot of opportunities. He has not been putting well. And he hasn't been playing the greatest, to be fair. He hasn't. He's been off. But it's still Jon Rahm. He can still light it up with the best of them. I mean, the Players was awful, and that's some of the rounds that are getting factored in here with the poor irons. The putting has been pretty bad. Pretty bad. I don't think Jon Rahm's 38th, but I would be cautious on Jon Rahm. I am. I'm kind of cautious on Jon Rahm. So, having said that, he's going to go win and flip me the middle finger, but I don't know. It's one of those gut feelings that I'm a little cautious on Jon Rahm. So the one player that we haven't mentioned is the pure pivot in the area. If you heard that was my ankle. It's Cam Smith. Cam Smith sitting at 8%. Now, there are a lot of potential reasons for that. Maybe players, or maybe your fellow contestants are biased in the sense that they don't like the rumors swirling around him and Liv, and they don't want to root for him. Maybe they're maybe they're factoring in those rumors and thinking they're going to distract him. Either one of those scenarios is viable. I don't see a reason not to use Cam Smith. I'm not saying to go out and use him. Yes, he's 8%, so he's a pretty good pivot, especially in the 10Ks. But I'm not advocating that you go use him. Like I'm much higher on Xander, even though he's not quite double the percentage owned, but close. I'm much higher on Xander. I like Cantley more. But I think not considering Cam Smith is a mistake. I think you should consider him. Whether you use him or not, I might not use him. But he's definitely going to be considered. His par 4s are good. His irons are great. His par 3 performance is great. He's not top 10 in anything, but the stats and metrics that I feel are going to play this week, I've only put 5% in total procs. We all know his short game prowess too, so he can scramble. If he gets wavered, it's going to be an issue. That's the big downside with Cam Smith. But I don't see a problem with using Cam Smith. I really don't. So if you're asking me to rank the 10Ks, I am going to probably go Xander number 1, even though he is fairly chalky at 13.7. He's fourth in terms of ownership in the 10Ks. So I'll go Xander 1. I'm going Patrick Cantley number 2. I will go probably Justin Thomas number 3. Cam Smith 4. Rory 5. Scheffler 6 and Rahm 7. I like Rory. I like Scotty Scheffler. You see them in the rankings. It's this plus their ownerships that are bringing them lower in the 10K rankings for me. Am I going to use them? Yeah, I'll use them. But, I'm not rushing to use them, as I guess I should say. And like I said, I'm just cautious on John Rahm. So there's a look at the 10Ks. Let's move to the 9s. We have Matt Fitzpatrick, Tony Finau, Will Zalatoris, Cam Young, Jordan Spieth, and Victor Hovland. So 6 players here. Number 1 in my rankings, Tony Finau. Love Tony Finau this week. What's there to say? He's in great form. Now, there's one thing that would be cautious about with Tony Finau. He's historically not a good putter, especially on Bermuda. But he's been lighting it up lately. Do you ride the hot hand? Yeah, I think you have to. Look at this. He's coming off 2 wins. He had a top 30 at a major, a top 15. He did miss the cut, but, in his past, 7 events? He's got 2 wins, 2 more top 5s, and another top 15. Pretty damn good. Is he this putter? No, he is not. If he is, then we've got a new Tony Finau we need to evaluate. The putter will eventually cool off. Is it this week? I doubt it, honestly. I think I'm still going to ride with the hot hand in Tony Finau, but it is something to think about. But anyway, in the 9Ks, you have your most projected owned player and about roughly your 5th or 6th. So your most projected owned player is Will Zalatoris. And I understand it, but for the same reason that I'm down on Finau, Zalatoris just flat out is not a good putter. And he hasn't been a good putter lately or career-wise. 0.8, fine. It's nothing spectacular, but at least it was positive. Now, he did gain 4.5 at the PGA 3 months ago. Okay. But, there was a lot in between there. If I had any confidence in Will Zalatoris making a putt in a week, I would fire him up. And it looks like your fellow contestants aren't afraid of that. Everything else is wonderful. Where'd he go? So he's top 20 in these 3 metrics, the par 4s, irons, good drives. He's top 10 in birdies and opportunities. If he ever starts putting, look out. It's not a fade for Will Zalatoris, but seeing him at 17%, your most projected owned player, a little hard to get behind when there are enough players like Tony Finau, like Cam Young I like. We'll get to these others, but there's no reason not to use Will Zalatoris. Just understand you're at a 5v5 when you put him in the lineup. That's how I'll phrase it. So anyway, elsewhere in the 9Ks, everybody's getting used at least 10%. At least 10%. So you're not going to find uniqueness in here. I mentioned Will Zalatoris is the most projected owned player. You got Tony Finau just over 15%, excuse me. I'm not going to be getting away from it. I love Tony Finau this week. There's somebody else that's very chalky I'm not going to be able to get away from. As much as I said to think about the putting, I'm still going to ride the hot hand until he proves it's cooled off. So, Matt Fitzpatrick's fine, 13%. I like Matt Fitzpatrick. He doesn't have a bad stat. He has 2 or 3 middlings. The proxies aren't always the best. Good drives gained, okay. Because his irons are surprisingly, top 40% in this field. You wouldn't think that from Matt Fitzpatrick, but his irons perhaps just haven't. Again, you got to go think about it. These 3 are really damn good. He wins the U.S. Open. He top 10s the Scottish. He top 20s the Open. The irons are fine. They're just not spiking. They're not these big astronomical numbers that we've seen from Tony Finau lately. Even John Rahm had some spikes. I think Fitzpatrick's fine. That number should be a lot better or a lot higher. So I like Fitzpatrick quite a bit. Seeing him at 13%, I think is fair. kind of like Ju Hyun Kim when we talked about it in the initial reveal of the rankings. Don't love it, don't hate it. Kind of is where it is. Cam Young, I really like Cam Young this week. He's sitting at 11%. Jordan Spieth is the least projected owned in the 9Ks. He's at 10%. Victor Hovland is at 11.5. I like Victor Hovland quite a bit, even though the numbers suggest not. Again, this is one of those gut feelings, and this is the one I'm going to put quite a bit of emphasis on. If Victor Hovland does not play well this week, I'm not going to do well. So I'm going to have quite a bit of Victor Hovland this week. The putting, I don't think is this bad. It's not great, but it's not this bad. And a lot of the reason why I like Victor Hovland this week, around the green, I don't think is going to matter a whole lot. But if it does, TPC Southwind has been easier to scramble around than the average full field course or average tour event. So it shouldn't be that hard to have to scramble here if he does. But I like Victor Hovland this week. So, in the 9Ks, I'm not going to be able to get away from Finau. Zalatoris is fine. He's just, understand you're a 5v5 if you use him. I like Fitzpatrick. I like Cameron Young. Victor Hovland's a bit of a gut feeling on my end. Spieth, okay. Okay. Don't love it. I'm a little low on Spieth, I guess, but I can understand why you'd want to use him. I mean, the par 4 performance, we talked about this with Fitzpatrick. The irons aren't this bad, I'm sure. The putting's definitely not this bad. So, yeah. Moving into the 8s, you have, let's see, one player getting a whole lot of use. He is your third most projected owned. Yeah. So he's your third most projected owned. It's the other player that I'm not going to be able to get away from, like Tony Finau. It's Sung Jae. I love Sung Jae this week. All about some Sung Jae. In great form. A couple of the past winners of the Northern Trust, or what was the first playoff event, have had pretty darn good form coming in. Sung Jae's coming off 2 straight runner-ups, at least in the events he's played. There's a lot to like with Sung Jae. Really like Sung Jae. I'll set myself up for those 5v5s. I'm gonna use Sung Jae. Elsewhere in the 8Ks, you've got another kind of pivot at 8.5%, and all the others are kind of middling in and around here. So let's talk about Sam Burns. He's the next highest projected owned at 13% to your mention, I guess I should say, shot. I like Sam Burns quite a bit. Putting has been fantastic on Bermuda this year. He gets birdies in bunches. The one concern I would have, and I talked about this with Siwoo last week, he has not given himself a lot of opportunities, but he's been converting them. So eventually something's going to change. Either this number is going to continue to rise, he just gives himself opportunities. But what I think will happen is this putter is going to cool off. But he's not a bad putter. He's a fine putter, especially on Bermuda. So I'm more willing to trust him in this kind of regard, saying, few opportunities and converting them, a la Denny McCarthy, in the sense that I trust the putter enough that this is more akin to be who he is, as opposed to somebody like, who doesn't have a lot of birdies, giving themselves some opportunity. Yeah, so like somebody like Russell Henley, for example. Like Henley has a lot of opportunities, but hasn't been converting them, or at least as much. I tend to like this player better because we know he can give himself the opportunities. All it takes is a hot putting week. So, but coming back into the 8Ks, so Sam Burns, I like quite a bit. I think you are on the right track there, Shot. I like where you're thinking on that. The procs can be an issue, but I mean, you see the irons, they're 10th in this loaded field. The par 4 performance needs to improve a bit, but I like where you're at. I don't know if I'd put a win bet on him, and I'm not sure if you have, but in DFS, I like Sam Burns. He's at 13%, so he's a bit bit chalky, but yeah, I like Sam Burns, and he's what 3 percentage points less than Sungjae, and only $100 more. Let's see elsewhere in here. Remember, Hideki has withdrawn. He was a late withdrawal today. It was around 4 p.m. So he is out. You see, a lot of these players I don't have very highly ranked. Either like Joaquin Neiman. A lot of the metrics that I have put a lot of emphasis in, he has not played well. Shane Lowry normally rates out very high in my mixed condition model. He does not this week. So the one player that is kind of getting overlooked is Joaquin Neiman. He's at 8.5%. And he is the second lowest in terms of ranking in my 8Ks, 45th to Collins' 53rd. Yeah, I can kind of see it. The putting hasn't been fantastic. The procs has not been good at all, which relates to this strokes gained approach number being so bad. Joaquin Neiman certainly has a talent. I don't know. I kind of have to agree with the Fantasy National analytic community. I'm just kind of off Neiman. We talked about Ju Hyun Kim. He's not third in this field. He is there because he has so few rounds, and they're from the win last week. A lot of it being from the win last week. He's a fine play. He's sitting at 10%. So, do I think he's going to win or top 5? No, but I think he's a serviceable DFS play. So, just fine on Ju Hyun Kim. Billy Horschel and Shane Lowry are both at 12%. I like Horschel quite a bit more than Shane Lowry, even though they're so close in my rankings. I trust the putter on Bermuda. Billy Horschel just loves Bermuda. There's essentially that. And then the last one is Colin Morikawa. He is at a little under 10%. I'm just out on Colin Morikawa. This could be another one that bites me. But I'm just out on Morikawa. Like, the irons just haven't even been close to Colin Morikawa like. The putting, everybody knows his issues with the putter. The procs from the specific range here at TPC Southwind is not being good. He's just not converting his chances. He hadn't given himself a lot of chances. So, just out on Morikawa. So there's a look at the 8s. Morikawa's so cheap. Yeah, I mean, 8,700, it's cheap. I think there's a reason he's cheap. He just hasn't been playing good. He top 5 the U.S. Open a couple of months ago, sure. But before that, I mean, you go back to the RBC Heritage in early, we'll go back to the Masters. Call it early April. Top 5 the Masters, fantastic. Top 25 the RBC Heritage in a field that wasn't the strongest. And everybody has bad weeks. I mean, he does Colin Morikawa things. He hit his irons. He was in fuego with the irons and couldn't make a putt. Colin Morikawa things. The PGA, not good. Charles Schwab, again, a field that is not the strongest. Makes the cut to a middling finish. Misses the cut at the Memorial. Fantastic U.S. Open. But misses the cut at the Scottish and the Open Championship. Yes, he's cheap. And he's cheap in ownership. Less than 10%. Colin Morikawa will be somebody I lose to. If he plays great and Hovland plays poorly, I'll lose. Because I'm much higher on Hovland for $300 more. But yeah, there's a look at the 8Ks. I love Sungjae. I love Sam Burns, to be honest with you. I'm going to try to use Sam Burns quite a bit too. Ju Hyun Kim's fine. I just don't think he's third. Right? He's fine. I'm out on Neiman. I'm really out on Morikawa. Lowry and Horschel, If I'm coming here, I'm going Horschel, but I don't feel great about either one. Let's go to the upper 7s. In the upper 7s, you have 2 players getting a whole lot of love, and this is where your fellow contestants are starting to either mix and match or start to avoid. Your 2 highly owned players are Russell Henley and Corey Connors. Both of them are on the... Henley is just above 15%. Connors is just below 15%. Henley, we kind of talked about. I much prefer this type of player who I know will give himself opportunities. All it takes is a hot putter. Now, some people are just bad putters. Think of Luke List, Siwoo to a lesser extent, Colin Morikawa. But these players at least give them chances. The majority of the time, they at least give themselves chances. So I like Russell Henley at 15.2%, though. That's close to a fade for me because I like enough players around him. That's close to a fade. I have so much Connors and Burns. Yeah, I mean, they're good plays. Love Burns. Connors, for that matter. I like Connors a lot. I mean, number 2 in good drives, so that's either hitting the fairway or hitting the green. His irons, everybody knows his irons are really good. Par 4 performance is very good. The proximity can improve. It's not the best putter, but I don't think there's anything wrong with Connors. He was a bit disappointing last week at the Wyndham. He did turn it on Sunday, but my lineups were already tanked from there, so I kind of gave up on looking at Corey Connors because I was very high on Connors last week. But he did Corey Connors things. He lost 3 strokes on the greens. But this is the reason why I prefer these players because they can't, as long as they can show the ability to spike like Corey Connors has a little bit, generally he gives himself enough opportunities. Generally. So I like Connors, but seeing him at 14.9%, it's not a fade, but I'm not rushing to use him either. Let's see. You have some middling ownership in Aaron Wise and Taylor Pendrith. Wise at 11%, Pendrith at 11.5%. We talked about Pendrith last week. The data model is starting to adjust because he was out all that time with the injury. And since he's come back from the injury, I mean, good God, he's lighting it up. I mean, even before the injury, he had made 2 cuts, including a top 15 at the Players, then took time off from the injury, and all he's done is gone top 15, runner-up, top 15. Pretty good. I believe the rankings are starting to normalize with him, so I really like Taylor Pendrith. If he is indeed only at 11.5%, I'll be happy. I would have to think he's going to be a little bit higher. So I'm going to recommend Taylor Pendrith under the assumption he's at 11.5%, but he probably won't be. He'll probably be a bit chalkier. Aaron Wise always rates out well in my data model. He was 40th last week, so he was almost a full fade. He's 15th this week. All of it basically predicated mostly on the irons and the par 4s. He's good at the par 3s too. I mean, you see the proximity. The irons are generally pretty good. I don't know. Aaron Wise is just... I have a love-hate with Aaron Wise. So if you follow me on Twitter or follow me for enough time, like Aaron Wise is a FOMO, so I'm just... In DFS, Aaron Wise is what he is. I know I have an outright on him. So I just kind of, If he gets into a lineup, great. If not, Davis Riley. Really, really like Davis Riley this week. Irons have been great. Good at good drives. I mean, fantastic at good drives gained. Number 3 in opportunities, and he hasn't been converting them at the rate that you would think. Because he's not a terrible putter. Be on the lookout for Davis Riley. I really like where he's at coming off the Wyndham. Now, the Rocket Mortgage, everybody has a bad week. I can forgive that. The 3M was poor. But Travelers, US Open, in May, he was in Fuego, cooled off a little bit. I think he sparked something with the Wyndham last week. So I really like Davis Riley this week. He sits at 8%. Would love if he sat at 8%. Doubt he will. Somebody else I like is Max Homa. I think Max Homa is getting forgotten a little bit. What was Hatton's ownership? I'm with you on Riley this week. So Hatton, let me get to Hatton. I didn't talk about Hatton yet. Homa, I think Homa's getting forgotten a little bit too. Now, he does not have any elite statistics. His best is 12th in good drives gained, but he doesn't really have a poor one. Like, this is slight red, but he doesn't really have a poor one. He's just not standing out. I don't know. I would not count Max Homa out. I think he'll be serviceable in DFS, is how I'll phrase that. Terrell Hatton sits at 9.5%. Shot, you've been around long enough that I am a big advocate in Terrell Hatton in DFS, mainly because people, I don't know why they don't gravitate towards him. Now, sometimes he can lay real big fucking eggs on you. He did that at the Canadian for me. I really liked him at the Canadian. He just shit the bed. But last week at the Wyndham was fantastic. The Open was fantastic. Scottish, like, people sleep on Tyrrell Hatton. Yes, he is a very entertaining listen. All of his antics and stuff, but he's a good golfer. And when a course is difficult, which TPC Southwind will trend more towards difficult than easy, that's when you want Tyrrell Hatton. Top 10 in par 4s. Number 2 in Bermuda putting this season. Or at least this calendar year, excuse me. Yeah. Now he's got some big flaws, like par 3s, bad. The irons have not been good, but I think there's enough here with Tyrrell Hatton to warrant some serious consideration at 9.5%. So elsewhere, you got Homa at 8, or a little above 8. Riley is a little bit above 8. Seamus Power, I don't mind. I'm not rushing to use him, but I don't mind. He's at 6%. Keegan, 5.5. I am not on Adam Scott or Christian Bezadenhout. They sit at Adam Scott 2%, Bezadenhout 2.5. Mito's your all or nothing player this week, at least in terms of statistics. Like the irons, fantastic. He's number 1 in opportunities and converting them. The procs is fantastic. But anything he's not good in, he is atrocious in. At least the metrics that I think are going to play. So this is your all or nothing play. Mito's sitting at 9%. He's worth a shot, I think. But, if the par 4s truly are as important as I think they will be, that's going to be bad. He has a propensity to not find fairways and get so wayward that he can't find the green. So, Another thing that scares me with Mito too, like the Bermuda putting's not good, but yet he's been converting his opportunities. Something here is going to change as well. So he's either going to improve his putting statistics, or he's just not going to convert as much. More than likely, he's just not going to convert as much. I don't remember how great of a putter. I mean, Bermuda, he is field average, so I tend to think this is going to come down as opposed to this go up. So there's a look at the upper 7s. Let's move to the low 7s very quickly because I've been rambling for a long time already. In the low 7s, this is where your fellow contestants are really starting to bottom out in their teams. You've got one player who's getting a whole lot of love. That's Scott Stallings at 12.5%. Love Scott Stallings. I don't think people realize what kind of tear he's been on. At least the analytic community knows it. Now, his putting hasn't been great, but look at these past 4 events. A top 10, a top 5, a top 10, and a top 15. The dude is playing great golf right now. I feel like Mito hasn't been right since he choked it away. The event after the PGA, he played fine. He was pretty good at it, if I recall. We haven't seen a lot of him. At least I feel like I haven't seen a lot of Mito since then. Just even in the field, not to say in tournaments, just in the field. But coming back to Scott Stallings, like he's not a sexy name, but my God, look at this form. I mean, that's really strong. Yes, he's 12.5%. This is also some chalk that I'll eat. I love Scott Stallings. Where'd he go? Right here. Love some Stallings. He might be on Royd's side. Well, until they piss test him, I'm gonna ride Scott Stallings. But I mean, 5th or 6th in par 4 performance, 4th in irons, good putter as well. Now the concerning thing is he hasn't been giving himself a lot of opportunities, but has been converting. This is probably going to come down, but the putting has been fine. So kind of a Tony Finau thing in the sense of riding the hot putter while he has it. So I love Scott Stallings, 12.5%. You've got Chris Kirk at a little under 10%. That's a fade for me. Even only at 10%, that's a fade for me. I'm not in love with Chris Kirk this week. So par 4s are fine. The proximity is good. but he's not been a good putter this calendar year. The irons have been middling. So Chris Kirk at 10%, I'm off. And then the other one that's anywhere near 10% is Brendan Steele. Oh, I love Brendan Steele this week. If he is indeed at 10.2%, give me all the Brendan Steele. So Brendan Steele is the third and final player I'll say that I will lose to. If him and or Hovland play poorly, I lose. If Morikawa plays well, I lose. I love Brendan Steele. His ball striking is just fantastic, and this is set up to be a ball striking course against a lot of ball strikers. Par fours, fantastic. Number one in this loaded field in strokes gained approach in the last 36 rounds. Can't be overstated. Number 2 in good drives gained, which reinforces that. Or he can just find fairways if he has to. The proximities, immaculate. I love some Brendan Steele this week. Now the putter, sometimes it's Luke List. Close your eyes, pray to God it goes towards the hole. But I don't know. I really like Brendan Steele, and I'm banking on the fact that he can get I won't get greedy. Just be field average, please. Just be field average in a week where you don't shit your irons away. And I think Brendan Steele is going to be fine. I will bank on Brendan Steele, the putter, being even. So, but those are the 3 players in the low 7s that are anywhere near 10%. This is where your fellow contestants are really, really either really spreading themselves out or just neglecting behind those 3 players. So the next, kind of tier, I guess, of ownerships, JT Poston, a little under 8.5, fine. Number 10 in my data model, that's just because he's been on a heater. Is he 10th in this field? Probably not, but it's fine. He's just playing very well. So 8.5% at JT Poston. You got Cameron Davis at 9%. A lot of that's probably predicated on the distance, but he has some very, very strong, I'll say, underlying numbers. 4th in opportunities, 10th in birdies. The proximities are pretty good. Par 3s are good. He's getting deflated a little bit from the good drives game because he gets wayward quickly. I don't know if I'm as accurate as him, but I could give him a run for the money in terms of being close enough to the fairway. He gets very wayward very quickly, and the par 4 performance is middling. But I do like Cameron Davis at 9%. You've got Chez Reavie just under 9%. Okay. The proximities, really, really, really good. I mean, elite. Let's just call it what it is. It's elite. The opportunities, fine. Good drives gained, good. Irons have been good. He's fine. Don't love it, don't hate it. He's fine. And then 8, that's the only ones that are at the 8 percentage mark. So let's talk about a couple others in here that I don't mind. Let's talk Keith Mitchell. I was pretty high on him last week, and he was okay. He wasn't great, but he was okay. I say okay. He kind of fell off on the weekend like everybody else I had. But we're not on POA. So while he's not the best putter in the world, we're not on POA. The irons are very Jekyll and Hyde right now. But they're a little bit on an upswing. So I'll count that. And his putter's hot. So again, I'm riding some hot putters this week. Tony Finau, Scott Stallings, these kinds of players. So I really don't mind Keith Mitchell, even though he's rated low for me. Talk about Poston, Cam Davis. I mentioned I like Stallings. I mentioned Brendan Steele. Adam Long. I'm kind of back. I was off Adam Long last week. I'm kind of back on Adam Long again this week. Number 5 in par 4s, top 25 in both irons and good drives. Now he's got some really poor metrics here. I don't know. Kind of like some Adam Long this week. I'll dip my toe there. He's at 5.5%. So yeah, there's a look at the sevens, or low sevens, I should say. I'm gonna use Scott Stallings, even though he's chalky. Love Brennan Steele. I like Cam Davis quite a bit. Poston's fine. And take a look at Keith Mitchell and Adam Long. Let's move to the 6Ks, and you have a couple of players here that are getting some love. So in the 6Ks, you got Taylor Moore at 8%. Okay, yeah, I can see it. He's in fine form lately, especially at 6K when you get a player that's just not, he's not terrible at a lot of things. Now the irons haven't been fantastic, and the putter hasn't been great, but he's in fine form, especially last week. The Wyndham, the Rocket Mortgage. It's a disservice to Taylor Moore. He's in fantastic form the last two tournaments. I mean, he's got 4 straight top 25s. Sure, he's not this putter. He is not this putter, or at least he hasn't shown it on his short time on the PGA Tour. So, little gun shy there, but I'm riding hot putter, so I'll be using a little bit of Taylor Moore. Again, he is at 8%. Tom Hoagie, 7.5%. I'm surprised he's not higher rated considering the strokes gain approach. But that just tells me I'm off Hoagie. The par 4s are bad. Par 3s are bad. I know the proximities are good. Birdies and opportunities are good, but I'm just kind of off Hoagie. He's at 7.5%. Let's see. Anyone else? No. So the next highest are like 5%. So I'm going to throw out a couple of names here, and I'm not going into the full 6Ks. I'm not going to literal minimums, but I do want to throw out some names at you. Let's take a look at Alex Smalley. Good in opportunities, has not been converting them. All it takes is a hot week with the putter, and I think he's a better putter than what this number is showing. Bermuda, he's essentially field average, a little bit under it, but essentially field average. All it takes is one decent week like he had at the Wyndham, and the irons weren't even that great at the Wyndham. So if you can get a 1.0 here and get the irons where they typically are, I think it's a serviceable play in DFS, especially in the 6Ks. So take a look at Alex Smalley. Brendan Todd again for the putting. If you want to focus on putting, Brendan Todd's your guy. Don't sleep on Kevin Streelman. Anytime there's a difficult course, and this isn't difficult, but it certainly trends towards that side, Kevin Streelman just gets overlooked. He plays difficult courses well. Top 30 in iron and strokes gain approach. He'll find fairways. He's not the longest, but he's not he's not only hitting at 250. Like, he can get it out there enough. Top 20 essentially in opportunities. The proximities are fantastic. Now the putting, bad. He's not a great putter, that's for sure. But don't get fooled here. Look at the y-axis. It's a 10th. So again, not a porous putter. He's not Luke List. He's not great. He's not Luke List. Now last week notwithstanding, I don't think he kept it on the green when he putted. But take a look at Kevin Streelman. Don't mind him. The last name that I'm going to say, and it's the most comfortable I'm going, or the lowest on the price board that I'm comfortable going. Chesson Hadley at 64. Yes, I do. I know I have others starred. That's just because in their top half. I really like Chesson Hadley this week, mainly around this. Number 4 in this loaded field in par 4 performance. And if the par 4s are indeed as important as I think they will be, that sets up really well for Chesson Hadley. He is a fantastic putter on Bermuda. The irons have been very good, especially by Chesson Hadley's sake. So if I'm riding hot putters, I'm going to ride a hot iron player right now too. And look at the proximities. Really good. Birdies, good. Like, I like some Chesson Hadley at 6,400, and I have no problem going there either. It's not a stretch for me. Great on Bermuda. He's not this iron player, But again, I'm riding a hot hand in irons like I am in some of these other guys with putting. And he's been a good putter. Now he's on the upswing, sure, but he's just historically been a good putter. So there's a lot to like here with Chesson Hadley. I really like Chesson Hadley at 6,400 to do a stars and scrubs. I really like Chesson Hadley. So there's a look at the price board. I have been rambling on now for quite a while. We're going to run a little bit over, which is fine. So let me bring up Microsoft Excel and switch the view. All right. So for those who play tiers, tier 1, Rory, Scotty Scheffler, and Xander. It's probably Rory. I'm going to take Xander, though, for the consistency, but honestly, it's just probably Rory. Tier 2, you got Cam Smith, Patrick Cantlay, JT, Jon Rahm, and Tony Finau. I'm going to take Tony Finau because he's the number 1 player in my rankings. It's surprising to say that Jon Rahm would be the pivot. It just seems odd to say. I like Finau. Cantlay's fine. JT's fine. But I'm going to go Finau. He's number 1 in my rankings. Tier 3, Matt Fitzpatrick, Will Zalatoris, Cameron Young, Jordan Spieth, Victor Hovland. For as high as I am on Victor Hovland in Classic, I'm out in tiers. I'm out on Spieth. Young's fine. Zalatoris will probably be chalky, so I'll go Fitzpatrick. But I think Zalatoris is fine if you can afford the chalk. Tier 4, Colin Morikawa, Sam Burns, Sung Jae, Shane Lowry, Billy Horschel, and Joo Hyun Kim. Give me Sung Jae. No questions asked. I don't care if he's the chalkiest. Sam Burns is a good play too. I like Sam Burns, but give me Sung Jae. Tier 5, Joaquin Niemann, Max Homa, Henley, Tyrrell Hatton, Davis Riley, and Corey Connors. A lot to like here. I think Homa's sneaky. I think Hatton's sneaky. But I'm going to go between Riley and Connors. I don't think you can be wrong in either one of those two. Oh, if I have to choose one, it's going to be Riley, but it's by the slimmest of margins. And then finally, Tier 6, you got Sahith Theegala, Cameron Davis, Justin Rose, Scott Stallings, Cameron Tringale, Jason Day, and Mark Leishman. There's only 2 players I'm even considering in here. It's Cam Davis and Scott Stallings. My guess is Scott Stallings will be pretty chalky, at least in the analytic community of those who play tiers. So I'm going to take Cam Davis in that regard. All right, there's a look at the tiers. Let's build some classic lineups before we head off for the evening. Let's get a little situated here. Move the keyboard. If we're going to build these chalky lineups for your fellow contestants, we'll try to build a stars and scrubs for them. So we'll start with Rory. I don't know how many stars and scrubs lineups there will be. My guess is not many. But if they do go stars and scrubs, it's Rory, and then I'm going to bottom them out at Taylor Moore at 8%. And they're probably going to have to use Brendan Steele too. But I'm going to start with Taylor Moore. And if they're going stars and scrubs, just to save some names for people, let's go Rory Fitzpatrick, maybe? I don't know. So that leaves them 75. Let's give them Brendan Steele. So this is their 7,700 range. Depends on how starsy, scrubsy they want to go. You got Brendan Steele at 10.2. The next kind of projected is Corey Connors. And then 78 is Hatton, who's not getting a lot of love. Russell Henley is. So there's a potential look at stars and scrubs. Maybe not in the purest of sense, but maybe a little bit of a shell. 13% projected on, pretty high. But, it is what it is, because I think a lot of your fellow contestants are just building balanced. Like, it looks like they're going to go something to the effect of, like, Will Zalatoris, Sungjae would be third. Like, Sungjae, in between 95 and 90, or 85. Like, the next is Sam Burns. Maybe, maybe they go Tony Finau, Will Zalatoris. Sung Jae. They'll have to bottom out at, let's say, Scott Stallings. And then go, well, let's see, 76. That's Corey Connors again, Taylor Pendrith. So they could do that combo. Here's a shell of a balanced team. You can see a lot more chalky. I think that's where most of your fellow contestants are going. Before I make my lineups, I'll mention, in chat, throw out some names, throw out a guy or two, or a small shell that you want to try to build around. We can work on that. But let me show you how I've been building a couple of variations of lineups. If I'm going stars and scrubs, I really like Xander, and I mentioned I don't mind Chesson Hadley. I really don't. So I've been going to the effect of Xander, Tony Finau, and yes, Finau is very chalky, but it's number one in my rankings. Burns, Rory, okay. So I've been going like Xander, Finau. I don't want to go into a second six. I love Brendan Steele if he's indeed at 10%, which I don't think he will be. I've been going Brendan Steele, and then I've got a Ju Hyun Kim, and at 83, Shane Lowry, who I don't really like. I can come up to like Sung Jae. Well, we use Sung Jae. Okay, let's just use like Victor Hovland, and then I'll come off of Ju Hyun Kim. I need 73. JT Poston, fine. So here's an idea of how I've been building my stars and scrubs, and I've been pure stars and scrubs in that sense. Like, I don't mind going to Hadley. If I need to dip my toe in a second 6K, Mark Hubbard is okay. I mentioned Alex Smalley is okay. But if I'm coming to the 6Ks, it's Chesson Hadley at the bottom, like 6,400, or I might do like a Kevin Streelman type, something to that effect. But I really don't want to put 2 6s in here, and that's saying something. This being calls. I usually go crazy, but I don't like the idea of having 2 6s in here. And then if I go balanced, I've been doing something to the effect of like Fitzpatrick, Young, something to that effect. All right, so you want to try some Rory and Burns at 86. Well, if you're wanting Sam Burns to be your number 3 player, you're going to have to either be comfortable going into a 6, or you're going to have 2 to 3 lower 7s and build your stars and scrubs type lineup that way. If you're okay with your team starting Burns and Rory, you've got a whole lot more wiggle room where you don't even have to pretend to come to the 6Ks. I don't know some of these other players you might like, but you can bottom out at Cameron Davis and then come upwards to, I don't know how you feel about Keith Mitchell that I mentioned. You talked about Mito seeming off. I tend to agree with you on that. Like, Seamus Power's fine. I would recommend something like Taylor Pendrith here. And it gives you 78, which is essentially where you've been around in the price board. Like, I love Davis Riley. That gives you 79, which is Max Homa, Russell Henley, Terrell Hatton. I'll give you Russell Henley because he's the most chalky, and it's probably the safest option. I mean, that one's pretty chalky at 12.2, and I was giving you like Pendrith and Henley. Like, if you come off Henley, if you're comfortable, say, with a Max Homa, who I'm pretty high on, that gives you down to 11%. If you come off of Pendrith and say like a Seamus Power, that's really going to keep you unique. But there's a look at a Rory Burns start. Gives yourself a lot of room to maneuver in here. Like, you could come down off of Cam Davis into the 6Ks if you want to try to fit in another, lower 8, say a Ju Hyun Kim or something like that. But if you're trying to go Rory somebody and then Burns, it's going to be very difficult to do that without coming into the 6Ks. Like, if you, again, I hate to use the same players, but like, you'd have to go like a Brendan Steele, Scott Stallings, or maybe another player at the low sevens you are high on. Maybe a Chez Reavie, Adam Long, Alex Norm, Brian Harmon. Yeah, so kind of all depends on where you're wanting to go. I'll say JT Poston here. And then, you have 8,050 per person here. I don't know. Again, it's wherever you're wanting to go. But here's like your shell of a team here. Like if you wanted to force Burns third. Again, I don't know how you mentioned Morikawa being so cheap. We'll use Morikawa in this sense. I'm nowhere near him, but he is 8,700. That's ridiculously low for Colin Morikawa. Like 7,400s, you got Keith Mitchell, Harold Varner, Chris Kirk. None of those guys I was really high on, except for maybe Keith Mitchell. I mean, it's a 10.5. So I would much prefer the Rory Burns start in that of those two, of trying to create a shell around those two, because it gives you so much maneuverability even in the low eights, but also into the sevens, where you don't even have to pretend to come down into the sixes. But if you do come into the sixes, say a Kevin Streelman, a Taylor Moore, players of that ilk, you could probably squeeze in a Sam Burns, Sungjae, Sam Burns, Lowry, if you like Lowry, or Neiman, that kind of deal. I do like Burns this week. I like where you're at with Sam Burns. I mean, I like Rory, but he's just so darn expensive, 11,000. So, if I were to try to build a Rory, I will try not to use Sheston Hadley since I've already used him. I'll go Kevin Streelman, and then I'll go Adam Long. Again, just a different 7K name. If I'm doing 7K, it's more than likely Brendan Steele. But I can go something to the effect of like Rory Fitzpatrick. And again, this is that magic, 78 area. I am pretty unique, I would think, in those two, where I could probably afford to take like a Sungjae or a Joo Hyung Kim or Russell Henley. I'm going to say Terrell Hatton, just to mix things up. And again, we're at that magic 77 where Davis Riley, Aaron Wise, Taylor Pendrith. I'll say Davis Riley for the uniqueness. I mean, that's a 9.5. That's a sub 10% with a Rory and Fitzpatrick. So that's a lineup that I would like, and I might write that down right after the show. But anyway, there is a look at some of your options this week for the St. Jude shot and P. Anytime you are able to catch the show, you are in chat, so I really appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in and jumping in. Let me know in the comments how your teams do this weekend, or any of your outright wagers. Again, I will be posting my betting card here after a little while. I still need to do my or input my DFS lineups, but my betting card will be out there. Again, thanks for supporting the channel, watching and listening and commenting. I enjoy what I do and trying to help you all succeed and win every week. So for all of the wagers you have made this week at the St. Jude, for all of the DFS contests you've entered this week at the St. Jude, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.